The crayon did not invade like conquerors. They descended like predators. Silent, methodical, and grotesquely confident, they came not to negotiate or enslave. They came to hunt. Among the stars, they were feared as apex beings. Their culture, steeped in centuries of blood, revered the hunt above all. Conquering species wasn't conquest, it was tradition, and Earth, with its primitive rockets and fragmented politics, seemed like a low-hanging fruit. They circled the planet for months. Cloaked scouts monitored human behavior, military response time, atmospheric composition, and communication systems. The analysis was cold, clinical, arrogant. Earth had no planetary defense grid, no energy-based weaponry, no central government, no fleet beyond its solar system. In crayon terms, it was a green planet, untouched, isolated, and perfect. For first blood rituals, their mistake wasn't tactical, it was psychological. They mistook noise for chaos, emotion for weakness, diversity for division. And most fatally, they mistook humanity's restraint for inability. Their first strikes were textbook crayon, remote towns and isolated regions, hit fast, hit hard. They avoided major cities not out of strategy, but arrogance. They wanted the thrill to last. So they began with villages in Africa, logging camps in Siberia, ghost towns in the Midwest. Whole communities disappeared in one night. Families were dismembered mid-dinner, children lifted screaming into ships, buildings incinerated by thermal pulses, reduced to scorched skeletons. News spread like a virus, terrifying, confusing, unbelievable. Video clips leaked, people being dragged into the sky by tractor beams. Giant reptilian creatures stalking silently through forests, marking kills like trophy animals. At first, the world didn't believe it. Then it couldn't deny it. Governments panicked. Military forces scrambled to react, but by the time fighter jets arrived, the aliens were already gone. Nations issued statements of unity, but privately they prepared for their own survival. For a moment, Earth stood on the brink of turning against itself in fear, and then the killing stopped. Not because of mercy, but because the crayon were. Regrouping, organizing a larger campaign, planning to move towards cities, to escalate the hunt. But in the pause, humanity changed. The collective trauma wasn't paralyzing. It was catalytic. We didn't kneel. We dug in. From the ashes, a force emerged, not from a government or a nation, but from a mindset humanity hadn't embraced in centuries. Survival through unity. NATO shared command codes with Russia. China opened satellite data to India. Israel and Palestine created joint drone units, engineers, hackers, linguists, soldiers, all forced into the same war room. We had no other choice. For once, the human ego didn't dominate the response. We looked at what was killing us, and we adapted. Crash sites were scavenged, sometimes by civilians who risked their lives to bring back even a scrap of crayon metal. That metal became data. That data became blueprints. And those blueprints birthed a new phase, retaliation. The crayon came for sport, but Earth had teeth. In the Amazon rainforest, a crayon hunting group disappeared without a trace. What followed was a broadcast, hijacked onto a crayon warship's local channel, footage of their team's brutal end. Camouflaged drones, precision explosives, primitive traps with modern guidance systems. One soldier was impaled by sharpened bamboo covered in genetically modified acid. It wasn't just a win, it was a message. You bleed too. More strikes followed. In Tokyo, humans hacked into the crayon's optic systems, blinding their patrols just long enough to lure them into tunnels wired with thermite. In Alaska, snowstorms became ambush covers. In Mumbai, bioengineered viruses stolen from alien corpses were repurposed, slow, painful, targeted infections. Every attack came with higher precision. Every escape took longer. And for the first time, the crayons started to fear the night. Humanity became what the Crayon never expected: unpredictable, relentless, angry. With every new skirmish, Earth's armies were no longer reacting. They were evolving. Captured alien rifles were reverse-engineered into portable energy blasters. Human-made armor was fitted with Crayon shielding tech, allowing soldiers to withstand hits that would have vaporized them weeks ago. Exosuits adapted for urban warfare began rolling out in small units. Stealth fields were integrated into recon. Teams. What Earth lacked in raw power, it made up for in raw ingenuity. From this desperation, a new breed of soldier was born: Terrorcore. These weren't generals. They were survivors, people who had already lost families, homes, and cities. Each volunteer passed a brutal selection process. They trained not in simulation, but in active war zones, shadowing alien units, surviving without support. They didn't wear uniforms. They wore vengeance. Their mission wasn't to defend, it was to strike back, and they did. Hard. The Crayon homeworld, believed to be untouchable, became the target. Orbiting cameras, energy shields, climate warping defense mechanisms, all bypassed using a blend of stolen Crayon protocols and human creativity. Terrorcore landed silently. No announcement, no declaration, no ships in the sky, just boots in the dirt, systems offline, and chaos blooming like fire in the dark. They began hitting energy centers, destabilizing atmospheric regulators, detonating fuel silos using weapons hacked from the Crayon's own vaults. More importantly, they freed prisoners, not humans, but dozens of intelligent alien species who had been hunted, enslaved, tortured. Those species didn't just escape, they joined. For the first time, the Crayon weren't dealing with prey. They were facing a rebellion. From the inside, their hierarchy cracked. Lower castes began questioning orders. Scientists went missing. Commanders were assassinated by their own troops. All while Terrorcore infiltrated deeper. The Crayon tried counterattacks, but Earth's soldiers weren't standing in lines waiting to die. They moved through shadows. They hit once hard and disappeared. When the Crayon adapted, humans changed tactics, new traps, new poisons, new tech, and then came the final blow, the siege of the Central Command Citadel, the strongest fortress. On their planet, embedded in a mountain surrounded by storms, only their ships could navigate. Terrorcore used that storm, lured lightning into their generators, forcing overloads. Then, masked by the blackout, they entered through sewer tunnels. Designed centuries ago, long forgotten by modern Crayon tacticians. What followed was not a battle. It was a message written in fire. High-ranking generals were captured, defense systems were shut down, transmissions were hijacked and rerouted. Every Crayon ship in orbit watched their invincible command post burn from the inside. The war turned. Not because Earth was stronger, because Earth refused to be broken. The Crayon did something they never did before. They asked for talks. In the ruins of their own fortress, on a planet they once ruled, the Crayon sat across from humans, not as predators but as equals. No translator was needed. No peace was begged. Terms were issued. End the hunts. Recognize Earth's sovereignty. Dismantle your hunting fleets, or watch your empire collapse from within. The Crayon resisted at first. Pride, culture, tradition, they clung to them. But behind closed doors, their leadership saw the truth. The galaxy had changed. The apex had fallen, and Earth had risen. The treaty was signed in the ashes of the Crayon's pride, not in a conference hall or a pristine diplomatic station, but inside the hollowed remains of the Central Command Citadel. Blood still stained the floor. Smoke drifted from broken walls. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the once feared apex predators bowed to negotiation, not by choice, but necessity. Humanity's demands were uncompromising. No more hunts, No more culling worlds. Recognition of Earth's sovereign status. An end to all Crayon military operations targeting pre-warp civilizations. The Crayon delegates pushed back, clawing for loopholes, arguing tradition, trying to cloak their failure in ritual. But cracks had already formed within their empire. Military losses, internal dissent, and now the fear that what happened on Earth could happen elsewhere. Their prey had learned to fight back, and worse, to win. Under pressure from within and without, the Crayon finally folded. The treaty was sealed, witnessed by other galactic species, many of them former victims, now rising from their own chains. But victory was never clean. Back on Earth, cities lay broken. Nations had won, but at a brutal price. The US West Coast was a cratered scar. Berlin's skyline was split in half by orbital strikes. Shanghai's underground network had become a graveyard of survivors who never made it to the surface. And yet, in the wreckage, humanity thrived. Rebuilding began not with bureaucracy, but with shared sweat. Crayon technology, scavenged from battlefields and reverse-engineered by human minds, changed everything. Power grids were rebuilt with alien reactors, transportation systems ran on anti-gravity relays, cities rose faster than they fell, but not. Everything was about steel and circuits. The war had reshaped something deeper, the human spirit. Old divisions didn't vanish, but they dulled. Flags still flew, but behind them stood a banner far greater, the planet itself. The idea of Earth had transformed from a geographic identity to a collective consciousness. For once, survival didn't feel like a compromise. It felt like a mission, and the Crayon, they weren't the same either. The loss of their command center had humiliated their leadership. Many of the old guard were purged quietly. Some were executed in internal coups. The warrior caste, once unquestioned, was now viewed with suspicion. Scientists and diplomats, long mocked in Crayon society, found themselves rising. Some even reached out to Earth. It was awkward at first. Mutual scars and silent resentment hung heavy, but slowly, communications sparked innovation. Crayon and human engineers worked together on environmental restoration projects. Crayon starship architects offered hyperlane designs in exchange for atmospheric stabilizer blueprints. What began as distrust turned into competition, and from there into collaboration. Even TerraCore changed. No longer just soldiers, they became ambassadors. Liaison between species, walking reminders of what Earth had survived and what others could rise from. Statues weren't built for them. They didn't want them. Instead, their names were etched on data walls scattered across planetary colonies, encrypted only to be accessed in times of emergency. A final defense. Years passed. Earth, once isolated, became central, not just militarily, but morally. It led negotiations between species. It created planetary protection accords. It trained other races in hybrid warfare, not to dominate, but to defend. Earth had become the galaxy's immune system, a force that would never allow another Crayon-style hunt to happen again. But perhaps the greatest legacy wasn't in treaties or tech. It was in what every human child learned in school, a simple truth, forged in blood and sacrifice. They thought we were prey, but we're not. We are the storm they never saw coming. There are still whispers of resistance, of factions within the Crayon military who reject the treaty. Rogue hunters, scarred and bitter, who seek to rekindle the old ways. But every time they rise, they vanish, lost in sabotage, silenced by unseen forces, because Earth still watches, because TerraCore never disbanded, because humanity learned. The truth of survival. We were never the underdogs. We were just underestimated. And in a universe ruled by predators, that mistake was fatal.